Morning everyone, it's Ange Sinclair from Digestive Detective. Some ideas in the group this morning about intestinal permeability. So I thought I'd come on and talk to you about that. I've got wild hair today, it's just doing its own thing, so just bear with me with the hair. So leaky gut or intestinal permeability, as the doctor would call it. If you go to a doctor and say to them, I think I've got leaky gut, they'll look at you and say there's no such thing. But if you go in and say, I may have some issues around intestinal permeability, they'll know what you're talking about. So our gut wall is one colon cell thick, basically. And what happens, and basically because our colon is one cell thick, what it's doing is stopping what's coming in through the inside from getting into our bloodstream. So in a really good gut bacteria, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show you this, but it has tight junctions. I can't really show you. So if you put your fingers together and push them really together tightly, you'll see that's what the inside of your gut looks like. It has little junctions between each cell, and those junctions are supposed to be tight. They're called tight junctions, so they're supposed to be tight. So some things that happen when we eat foods that either don't agree with us, or or there's bacteria, or there's fungus, or there's viruses in our bloodstream, or there's toxins in our actual gut. These can punch through the barrier. So there's about 19 different things that they know that will cause leaky gut. So any of those things can traumatize the gut junctions. So I'll talk about what they are in a second. So some of those things come through and they actually crack little holes, or they punch little holes into the side of the gut wall. And then what happens is the proteins and stuff that are coming through go into the bloodstream. Once they hit the bloodstream, the body goes, man, these aren't supposed to be in here, and then it sets off an immune response. So consequently, once the immune response is set, the body sends all of its white blood cells to then check out what's going on and to get rid of whatever it is. So if that happens over and over and over and over, your body can tip over into autoimmune disease. So for example, things like SIBO, excessive sugar, excess alcohol, candida, acid blocking drugs, age, secondhand smoke, any sort of infection, any sort of stress, NSAIDs, which we take as painkillers for a gut. A lot of people take them when they have gut pain, so they can also punch holes in the gut. And the biggest one of the biggest ones is gluten. So when gluten becomes problematic, it will, for everybody, whether you have poor gut function or good gut function, Dr. Alessio Fasano found that everybody, when they eat gluten, those tight junctions open up for 3 hours. And in that 3 hours, damage can be done from stuff spilling into the immune system, into the bloodstream, and then the immune system being alerted. For people who have good gut health, after that 3 hours, the tight junctions close back up. For people who don't have such good digestive function, they stay open. So the longer they stay open, the more threat goes on to tipping you over into an autoimmune condition. And then the problem with autoimmune conditions is there's about 140 of them. They love to hold hands. So once you get one, you're more than likely to get another one. So things like rheumatoid arthritis, thyroid conditions like Hashimoto's or Graves', lupus, celiac disease, psoriasis, scleroderma. There's a whole stack of them that go together. So be mindful of that when you're dealing with leaky gut. Some signs and symptoms that you may have leaky gut, things like rashes, eczema, allergies, acne, rosacea, candida overgrowth, food allergies and intolerances, chronic fatigue syndrome, poor immune function. If you're constantly sick over and over and over again, I'd be considering then about leaky gut. What else? IBS-like symptoms. So bloating, gas, diarrhea, hormonal imbalances, they can all be put down to leaky gut. I think it's a term that is bandied around a lot. There is actually a test that you can do for leaky gut. It's called the Intestinal Permeability test. It's not a very expensive test to do. But for leaky gut, to heal the leaky gut, you need to remove the things that are from your diet that are causing the issue. And it's also not just foods. It can be the way you chew. If you don't chew your food enough, the protein's supposed to be small, because when it's passing from your gut to your small intestine, it goes at half a teaspoon a time. So if the bits are too big, what happens is they go through, but then they'll punch a hole through the side of your gut on their way. So it's better to make sure you're chewing properly. So all those things. So to heal the leaky gut, some of the things we need to talk about is to remove the issues that are causing it. So if we're not chewing, we need to chew better. If we're not breaking down the food, we need to take digestive enzymes or hydrochloric acid or bile acid or things like that. So we need to make sure we have no infections, because infections can also exacerbate what's happening in the actual internal environment. We need to take out foods, and generally the foods that functional practitioners take out are things that are highly inflammatory for a lot of people. Eggs, nuts, nightshades, dairy and gluten are probably some of the biggest ones. So that's probably a good starting point. And replace those things like we just talked about, digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, bile acids. As we age, we lose a lot of that function of those, so it's good to actually replace them. Then do the good bacteria, so replacing prebiotics with food and probiotics as well. So there's a time for those. And then repairing the lining using foods and supplementation. So some things that are really useful food-wise, I would suggest bone broth daily is really helpful. Will it be enough to heal the leaky gut by itself? I don't think so. And the other misconception I see a lot is people come in and say, well, I've had leaky gut, I've been doing this for 3 weeks and now I should be better. To repair a leaky gut, it does take a while. It can easily be 6 to 12 months, depending on the severity of it. So I think that it's an interesting thing. I guess the hardest thing about leaky gut is other things cause the same sort of symptoms, like what's one I can get? Rosacea, for example. So rosacea is a common one that people get with leaky gut, but that's also a common symptom of SIBO. So I guess we haven't quite figured out yet, are some of these things actually the cause or rather our driver of leaky gut? So that's sort of some of the things. Poor immune function, for example, is that just because you're not taking in enough good nutrients, or is it because you have leaky gut? So there's those sorts of issues to weigh up as well. I think for me, looking at intestinal permeability and how we can go about that daily, making sure that you are chewing, making sure that you're digesting food. So if you're seeing food in your stool, you're probably not digesting food enough, and you need to be looking at taking either digestive enzymes or working on how you chew, because really digestion's starting in our mouth. So if we're not getting the results we need, or if you're even getting a parasite, if you're getting a parasite or something like that, it's because something upstream's not working. So you have to sort of do the whole digestive function, not just, oh my God, I've got leaky gut. So you have to work through each step as you go. So I hope that's been helpful. Amina, thanks for watching. I think that it's an interesting topic. I think there's not so much around about it now as there has been in years past. I think we've moved on to other things. It's lost its sexiness. But gut barrier wall function is a really important function, a really important aspect of gut health. So keeping those prebiotic fibers that we talked about last week, keeping them in your diet regularly, because they help strengthen gut barrier function, especially things like acacia and partially hydrolyzed guar gum. They actually really help tighten those gut junctions. So they're good things to add. And be mindful of what you're taking, what you're putting into your body to, when you've got a headache or you've got something, be mindful of that. You're not taking things that are going to upset your gut balance. Try and do alternate things before you actually come down to taking a pharmaceutical. That would be my would be my choice for you. And chew your food properly. It's really important. And most of us are in such a rush when we sit down to eat, we don't think that through enough. And one of the other things around that is we don't breathe very well either, because we're coming from a fight or flight situation where we've been rushing all day. To sit down, we need to breathe into that. So I always suggest to people to get your digestive system to turn on when you're coming from an outside environment to inside to eat. Always take 3 really big deep breaths before you start eating. And another thing is to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. And if you breathe, you should be breathing into the hand on your belly. If you're breathing to the hand on your chest, that means you're still in fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, that's actually going to increase your chances of getting indigestion and heartburn and gas and bloating, because you're not actually breathing using your diaphragm, and this impacts on our overall digestive capability. So they're all things to think about, and I hope that's been helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Meet, and bye.